I don't know how far a fetal medicine talk is going to go in an infertility crowd, but I'll try to make it as concise and precise as possible. What I am going to talk about today is on screening. And when we talk about screening, whether it's cancer screening or screening for malignancy or any other medical problem, our aim is always to find out the disease and eliminate it. Isn't that what we try to do? To find, treat, prevent. But is it the same thing that we do in fetal medicine? Are we trying to find out abnormal babies and terminate them? Is that our job? Is that our responsibility? And so before I start my talk, I want you to change the way you think and approach screening in fetal medicine. We are not there to find out abnormal babies and terminate them. Our job is to provide information to the mother so that she can take an informed decision as to whether she needs to continue her pregnancy, whether she needs this baby that has a probable abnormality or not. And that was what was outlined in this editorial, which came way back in 1994, which says that we should change the way we approach screening. Don't think of screening as an opportunity to pick out abnormalities and terminate them, but an opportunity to allow the mother to take her decision. So why do we screen for Downs? Why is Downs the most important problem? It's because if you look at any kind of genetic abnormality which causes mental retardations, Downs would be the most common abnormality that you would come across. 1 in 300 pregnancies are going to be affected with chromosomal abnormalities, and of them, the most common ones would be 18, 13, 21, of which the commonest one is going to be trisomy 21, and a vast majority of these babies are going to be born in the so-called low-risk young mothers. So what do? Do we offer a diagnostic test for all these fetuses? Do we go in and do an amniocentesis and find out if our babies are normal? Just as we do a hemoglobin test or test for thyroid disorders in pregnancy, do we stick in a needle and try to find out if the baby is normal or not? But the problem with doing a diagnostic test is, unlike other tests, this test carries a risk of abortion, which is around 1%, which means for every abnormal or every 4 babies with Down syndrome that you pick up, you're going to lose a normal child, and that is totally unacceptable, which means we need to screen. So how do we screen? There are a number of tests out there. A lot of people, a lot of companies out there, all of them are going to come and tell you that they have got the best test. So how do you identify the best test? To identify the best test, you ask 3 questions, just basic 3 questions. The first question is, what is the detection rate of your test? The detection rate primarily means the ability of a test to pick an abnormality. So if I say I have a test with a 95% detection rate, it means that out of the 100 babies with Down syndrome that are going to be born in a particular place, my test will be able to pick up 95 of them. So which means if your detection rate is higher, the chance of picking up an abnormality is going to be higher. But that is not enough. You need to know more. Because when you pick up an abnormality, there is a risk of losing out on normal babies. Therefore, you need to know the false positive rate. What are the chances that your screening test is going to falsely classify a normal baby as probably abnormal? And to prove that baby is normal, you have to do an unnecessary amniocentesis. So a false positive rate tells you the number of unnecessary amniocentesis that you need to do to find out if your pregnancy is normal or not. So let's say the false positive rate of a test is, say, 10%. What does that mean? If you have 1 lakh babies being born here in this district, and if you do combined test for all of them, and if there is a 10% false positive rate, what does that mean? 10,000 pregnancies are going to get an unnecessary amniocentesis. And if you're going to lose 1% of all those babies, 1,000 babies would be lost in your endeavor to try to find out babies with Down syndrome, and that is unacceptable. So you need a trade-off between the detection rate and the false positive rate, and that trade-off is around 5%. So if your false positive rate is anything above 5%, it is not a good test. Now finally, the last question you need to ask is the positive predictive value. What are the chances that this baby will actually have Down syndrome if my test turns out to be positive, which is also called as OAPR. I will revisit that concept after we go through a couple of slides so that you understand this concept a little bit more better. Now, when we try to understand screening, we need to understand a little bit about genetics. And that is where most of our problems arises, because we as clinicians are not very good at statistics. So I just wanted to understand a very basic concept of statistics, and that is basically to understand what statistics means in various forms of screening. If you look at different types of screening that are available, you have the combined test, the triple test, and the quadruple test. The combined test is the combination of beta-HCG and PAPE. The triple test has other two markers, AFP and estriol, and the quadruple test has the addition of inhibin. We do not use the triple test because its detection rate is quite low at around 75% with a very high false positive rate. So we're not going to talk about the triple test. We need to understand how to use the combined test and the quadruple test. So that means we should understand statistics. So it's not a very detailed review of statistics, but just enough for us to understand and interpret reports. There is a statistical concept called as the Gaussian distribution or the Bell's distribution curve, which means if you look at any biological variable, let that be height, weight, BP, anything, you will find that a vast majority of the people would be in the center, which forms the average, and there would be a middle value called as the median. For example, if you look at the BP of all the people sitting here, your median value would be around 120/80. But if you go higher, if the number of people who have got a value higher than the median value are looked at, you would find that they would be towards the right of that curve. And if they are above 2 multiples of median, it means that they are extremely high and there is a good chance that they could be abnormal. And if you look at the left side of the curve, you would find that they are going to have a lower value than normal. And if they are less than 0.5 moms, there is a good chance that they are going to be abnormal, in spite of the fact that they could be within the normal range as well. So the further away you are from the median, it tells you that there is a good chance that there could be a abnormality. Now, having understood that, let us look at the various products that we assess during serum screening. There are two groups of products. On the left-hand side, you can see placental products, beta-HCG, PAPE, and inhibin. And on the right side, you can see fetal products like MS-AFP and estriol. Now, if I look at the normal distribution of these products in normal babies and compare it with the normal distribution in Down syndrome babies, this is what I would see. The red normal distribution depicts the normal distribution of beta-HCG in Down syndrome babies, and the blue normal distribution curve depicts the distribution in normal fetuses. And by looking at that distribution curve, immediately you know that beta-HCG is higher in babies who have Down syndrome. What happens to PAPE? The red peak is now to the left of the blue peak, telling us that PAPE is lower in babies with Down syndrome. The same thing happens with all the other markers. Now, there is an interesting concept that's happening here. The fetal products are less, the placental products are high. If you notice the pattern of the products that I have displayed here, you would find that the fetal products, AFP and estriol, are low, and the placental products, inhibin and HCG, are high. So what's happening here? The fetus is unable to produce these products, and therefore the placenta is overcompensating. Now, the most important point to understand here is none of these products are produced on chromosome 21. None of these products are byproducts of chromosome 21. Then why are we assessing these products? Because we are assessing these products to understand the normalcy of the fetus. Is the fetus capable to produce proteins or not? Is the placenta overcompensating? And when we see that pattern, we say that pattern is abnormal, and the most common abnormality that is associated with that pattern is trisomy 21. To give you an example, let me talk about another clinical symptom, say fever. Fever does not always mean that there is COVID, but fever was used as a screening tool to pick up people who had COVID. In exactly the same way, the combined test is not specific for Down syndrome. It is just a test that looks at the normalcy of the fetus and tries to see if the baby is normal or not. And if abnormal, we try to find out if it has got the commonest abnormality, which is trisomy 21. Now, if both the placental markers and the fetal markers are bad, then it could be other aneuploidies like trisomy 18 or 13, and that is called as the trisomy 18 profile. Now, if the fetal products are less and the placental products are more, I said it could be Down syndrome, but there could be other abnormalities like triploidy and Turner's with high drops. Now, here's the best part. When you do a combined test, and if your combined test is positive with a risk of above 1 in 100, 78% of your clinically significant aneuploidies are going to be present in that group. Aneuploidies other than Down syndrome. I want you to understand that and keep that in your mind and tell you why combined test is still important. So how do you screen these patients? You can do a combined test or you can do a quadruple test if the patient doesn't come and visit you in the first trimester. All the other combinations are not used nowadays because it requires 2 tests done at 2 different points of time. So we're just going to concentrate on the combined test and the quadruple test. The combined test is the combination of an ultrasound marker, nuchal translucency, of serum markers, beta-HCG, PAPA, and the maternal characteristics of the mother. Now, the most important driving force of this test is the nuchal translucency, and therefore it has to be taken absolutely according to the standards of the Fetal Medicine Foundation. So it has to be taken when the CRL is between 45 and 84. And the fetus has to be in exactly this neutral position with this amount of magnification where you're seeing only the head, the neck and the thorax, and the measurement has to be taken appropriately. If you do not take it appropriately, then 60% of the time your tests are going to be abnormal. So once you have got a good NT, you then add in your maternal characteristics like her age, her other factors like whether she's been treated with IVF or she's got any other specific history, all those factors are taken into account. Once you have done that, you proceed further and you can look at other markers like the nasal bone. And the nasal bone is probably the most abused marker, and it's important for all of us to understand that we do not measure the nasal bone in the first trimester. We just look for its presence or absence. Now, if it is absent, there is a strong chance that the baby could have Down syndrome, but do understand that normal babies could also have an absent nasal bone. The other markers that we look at are the ductus venosus flow, which is a precordial vein which supplies blood into the heart. Here specifically, we are looking for A wave reversal or an absence of the A wave. And similarly, in the heart, we are looking at the tricuspid valve and trying to see if there is tricuspid regurgitation, primarily to pick up the most common disorder that you would get in Down syndrome, which is an AV canal defect, which you can see here on your image. Now, is it important to look at all these markers? It is important to do the combined test, I totally agree. But what about these other ultrasound markers? Your sonologist or your fetal medicine specialist who is working with you may come up to you and say that he or she is not confident in looking at these markers. Does that mean she cannot do a good job? For that, let me explain this chart that you can see here. I have marked out the portions that are significant. If you see here, the maternal age, the NT and the serum markers together forming the combined test has a detection rate of 95%. Now, adding all the other markers does not actually change the detection rate that much. It only increases the detection rate from 95 to 96. That is just a 1% increment. So all you need to do is do a good NT and you get a detection rate close to 95%. But the addition of the other markers are helpful, and they are helpful in reducing the false positive rate by half. So if your fetal medicine specialist is capable of looking at the other markers, you will be reducing the number of unnecessary amniocentesis, but you're not going to increase your detection rate. Now, having understood all that, let's try to read a few reports. That's where most of us falter. Most of us get a report of the combined test and then we don't try to ask that question as to why this test has become positive. We just see the red bar and say that it is screen positive. But now, having heard about all these things that I've talked about, let us try to answer this very important question: why has she become screen positive? Now, if you look at this chart, you can see that her background risk, that is her age risk, is around 1 in 1000. After she did her screening test, her risk became around 1 in 100, 1 in 220. So why has her risk increased? Let us look at her values, the NT, PAPE, and beta HCG. Now, the values that you're seeing here are not absolute values. They are multiples of median. And if you remember what I talked about when I talked about the Bell's curve, you can clearly see here that the NT value is extremely high. It is greater than 2 multiples of median. Whereas the PAPE value and the free beta HCG values are pretty much within the normal range. So when you see a report like this, what do you want to do next? Are you going to immediately counsel for amniocentesis, or are you going to ask the most relevant question that is very important here? Did she have a good NT? Don't you want to see the NT image to be sure that the NT was taken properly? Because this test has become positive only because the NT is greater than 2 moms. So when you get a report like this, ask for the NT image. And if the NT image has not been taken as per the guidelines, this report is not valid at all. What about this report? Now, this report may be something that would be closer to your specialty, infertility. Because if you look at this risk report, you can see that she came in with a prior risk of around 1 in 65, which means her age risk is very high. And after her screening was done, her posterior risk increased to 1 in 40. So here the most important thing you have to ask this patient is, what is her age? And here her age is 42. And at 42 years, if she is becoming pregnant, the next important question is, did she become pregnant on her own, or was there an IVF procedure involved? And if IVF was involved, you need to know the age of the donor. And it's not just enough to know the age of the mother. So here the most important question to ask is whether she has done an IVF procedure and did she use a donor. And if you put the donor's age, probably her risk will become low. But before brushing it under the carpet, look at the serum markers. If you look at the serum markers, you can see that her PAPE is pretty low. It is less than 0.5. So even if her combined test risk based on the donor egg's age comes off as low risk, still she's at risk for placental insufficiency. She's at risk for FGR and preeclampsia, and that is directly related to her age. So it's important to understand that this combined test gives you a lot of information if you are willing to ask the right questions. But if the NT is extremely high, now these are conditions where you will not do a combined test. If the NT is greater than the 99th centile for a gestational age, do not go in for screening, go in for direct invasive testing. And a cutoff that you can all remember is 3.5 millimeters. If the NT is greater than 3.5 millimeters, do not offer screening, go in directly for an invasive test. And the reason I'm telling you this is because as the NT increases, you can see that there is an exponential increase in the chance of a chromosomal abnormality. So do not go in for screening, go in for direct invasive testing. Now, if the NT is high, you should understand that it could be chromosomal defects. It could be other problems as well, skeletal dysplasias, cardiac defects, or fetal infections. And also understand that 70% of these fetuses could be normal as well. So after doing all your tests, if you find that everything is normal and that the NT is resolving, it means that there is a good chance that this baby could be normal as well. Finally, we come to the quadruple test. Now, when you look at the quadruple test, we are not going to use it in isolation. We are going to use it only if the mother has missed doing the combined test in the first trimester. That is the only role of quadruple test today. It is not your primary test. And do not use it in isolation without integrating the combined test results that you have got. If you're doing a quadruple test, understand that you have to incorporate the combined test results into your quadruple test. If you can't do that, please do not do a second trimester screening after the first trimester screening comes out to be positive. Now, coming to the question I asked right at the beginning, positive predictive value. What are the chances that the baby will have Down syndrome if the test turns out to be positive. Now, if a mother comes into your OP and shows you a combined test result that says her risk is 1 in 200, you will tell her that out of 200 women, there is a chance that one person will have Down syndrome. But that mother is not going to understand that statistics at all. She's invariably going to ask you, in your experience, what are the chances that this baby will have Down syndrome? And that is why I want you to remember this number. Whenever the combined test turns out to be positive, and if the mother is less than 35 years, the chance that her baby will actually have Down syndrome is only 3%. Is only 3%. 97% of the time, the child is going to be normal. And if she's above 35, her risk jumps from 3% to a maximum of 10%. So 90% of the time, even if the woman is above 35, if her combined test is positive, still the chances are of the baby being normal. And that is enough motivation for the mother to decide to go ahead and go in for invasive testing rather than directly terminating on the basis of a combined test report. Another question that most of them can ask you is, what are the chances that the baby will not have Down syndrome if the combined test turns out to be negative, which is called as negative predictive value. So if a mother is, say, 36 or 37 years old and she's done a combined test and the combined test comes out as negative, and then she's still worried whether her baby has got Down syndrome or not, there the number that you can quote is 99.99%. If the combined test is done properly, the chance that the baby will have Down syndrome, irrespective of the age of the mother, is 99.99%. How reassuring is that? So it's important to understand that the combined test works on two planes. One, to reassure the mother if her test turns out to be negative, and also positively assure her mother that even if the test turns out to be positive, there is a greater than 90% chance that this child could still be normal. That brings us to NIPT. Now, what is the importance and role of NIPT in this era where combined test is also very important? How do we use NIPT? Now, the thing about NIPT was that it came into the market promising a lot, saying that there was a 99% detection rate with a false positive rate of 0.1%. Now, this is actually a very good test because it answers those first two questions that I asked perfectly. What is the detection rate? 99%. What is the false positive rate? 0.1%. But is that actually true? Now, let's understand what NIPT does. NIPT does not separate fetal DNA from the maternal DNA and run an analysis on the fetal DNA to tell you whether the baby is normal or abnormal. It does not do that. There is no test in this world that can separate cell-free fetal DNA from maternal-free DNA. So what does it do? The mother's blood contains a collection of two kinds of DNA. One that comes from the mother, the other that comes from the fetus. It contains a collection of DNA. Now, if you test the blood of anyone sitting in this room, you would find that the proportion or concentration of each chromosome is fixed. It will not change. If I look at the concentration of cell-free DNA in my blood and the blood of all these people sitting here, for chromosome 21, it would be fixed at around 1.5. And when you take a mother's blood and if you find that that concentration is higher, then invariably it means that there is an additional chromosomal supply coming from somewhere else. And because the mother is normal, we assume that it is coming from the fetus and we say that the baby may have Down syndrome. So it is only looking at the concentration of chromosome 21 in the mother's blood. But what happens with NIPT is that sometimes you do not get a result. And when you don't get a result, and if it is because of this very common problem, that is a low fetal fraction, then the chances that the test is going to be sensitive is very, very low. The detection rate of an NIPT when the fetal fraction is low is even worse than the triple test. That's why low fetal fraction can lead to a no call rate or a no result rate. So what happens here? Why do you get low fetal fraction? There are a number of reasons why you would get low fetal fraction, but I want you to remember two very important conditions. One of them is obesity and the other one is an abnormal fetal karyotype. Now, when the mother is obese, the mother's blood will have a lot of her own circulating free DNA. So it drowns out the fetal fraction that comes from the placenta. It's like having a glass of milk and putting a drop of ink. When you put a drop of ink into a glass of milk, it gets contaminated pretty fast. But if you put that same drop of ink into a bucket of milk, it goes unnoticeable. The same thing happens in obese mothers. Now, when you have low fetal fraction, it could also be because of an abnormal karyotype. If the baby has got poor placental function, then the amount of cell-free DNA that is excreted into the mother's blood is also going to be low. And because of that, also you can get a no-call result. Let's see what happens in real life when you do NIPT. When you do NIPT, I'll just finish in 10 minutes. When you do NIPT for around 1 lakh people or 1 lakh women, and if you have a 3% no call rate, it means you will be able to pick up only 96% of the babies that have Down syndrome, because around 6 babies with Down syndrome would have a no result. So this decreases the detection rate from 99 to around 96%. And that's why it's important to understand that if we do NIPT on its own, our detection rate is nowhere near 99%. So the best method would be to do the combined test and then do NIPT to the intermediate risk group. And after you do NIPT for the intermediate risk group, even if you get a no call rate, you could still fall back on the results of the combined test. I'm not going through the conditions where you're going to get false positives because we don't have time. I just want you to remember that we would not do NIPT if you have structural malformations or if you find that the NT is greater than 3.5. In those cases, you go in for direct invasive testing. And also I want you to understand the OAPR, or the positive predictive value of NIPT. In the combined test, it was 3% for a woman less than 35, and it was 10% for a woman greater than 35. But in NIPT also, it's nowhere near 99% or 98%. When the NIPT test is positive, the positive predictive value for a woman less than 35 is only 45%. And it drops for other aneuploidies. And if the mother's age goes above 35, it goes up to 77%, which means NIPT is never 100%. If it turns out to be positive, we need to follow it up with a diagnostic test as well. So finally, how do we use NIPT? We can use it directly for all patients if you want to, but the problem there is you would miss out on clinically significant aneuploidies, which would be present in the combined test risk group of greater than 1 in 100. And also you would get a no call rate for around 3% of your population, dropping down your detection rate to around 96%. Therefore, what is the best method? So this is what is being followed in UK currently. They do the combined test and divide pregnancies into 3 groups. The first group being where the risk is greater than 1 in 10, and they offer invasive testing with microarray to that group. 1 in 10 to 1 in 2,500 gets an NIPT, and greater than 1 in 2,500 has no testing at all. What we have done at our center and what we have advocated on various fetal medicine platforms is to change the risk from 1 in 10 to 1 in 100. And we're going to offer amniocentesis with microarray for all those babies who have a risk of greater than 1 in 100. And from 1 in 100 to 1 in 1000, we offer NIPT, and greater than 1 in 1000, we do no testing at all. So when we change this cutoff, what is happening? The traditional cutoff is 1 in 250. When we brought it down to 1 in 100, we have decreased our invasive testing rate. On the other hand, we have not made any compromise on the detection of Down syndrome because we have offered NIPT till a risk of around 1 in 1000. At the same time, because we are doing microarray for that high risk group of above 1 in 100, we won't miss out on clinically significant aneuploidies as well. I hope that brought some simplicity to all the clutter that surrounds screening. Thank you so much.